The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and welcome to our Discovering Your Path to ADFS and Understanding InforOS webinar. We are so excited to have you here, and we're going to be starting in just a few minutes. Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for joining our webinar. Again, thank you. And I mentioned this before, but we're going to be starting in a few minutes to allow everyone to get settled in. So now's the perfect time to grab yourself that second cup of coffee or refresh the one you already had. And again, we'll be starting in just a few minutes. Thank you. Hi, good morning again. Thank you so much for joining our webinar, Discovering Your Path to ADFS and Understanding InforOS. We'll be starting in just a few minutes to give everyone plenty of time to hop on here. Thank you for understanding, and we'll talk to you soon. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm going to get us started today. Again, my name is Sarah Swanson, and I will be kicking us off this morning. Thank you so much for joining our webinar on discovering your path to ADFS and understanding InforOS. Just a quick note. A quick troubleshooting note. If you are having trouble hearing the presenter, it might be due to a setting on your dashboard. So please hop in to that setting under audio and change from that little button there that's clicked next to no audio to click phone call or computer audio. I know I'm describing this and you most likely cannot hear me because, well, you have no audio. So I hope that the screen explains it to you. And I'll give you a few seconds here to click from no audio to computer audio or phone call. Thank you. And once again, welcome. Emily, I'm going to pass it over to you and let's get started.
Thank you, Sarah. As a team, JK Seva is driven to transform business processes. We focus on software solutions to meet your organization's HR, payroll, finance, supply chain, and workforce management needs. And we've been a Lawson partner since 1996. My name is Emily Fisk. I'm the account executive for the Eastern U.S., based out of Chicago. Justin Raskin is our account executive for the Western U.S., based out of Sacramento. And Eric Kastle is one of our senior technical consultants and a panelist for today, along with Todd Kastle, who's our presenter. Todd directs our Lawson Infor technical team, and he's an expert at understanding the individual needs of our clients, analyzing challenging technical issues, and how current technology fits in with Lawson's market direction. He's also a former Infor technical trainer. Now, before we begin, please know that you are able to submit questions at any time. We will be answering them in our live Q&A with our technical team at the very end. We will also have a couple polls throughout so we can understand your needs. And at the very end, we will have an exit survey so you can let us know if you would like us to send you a recording of our presentation. And we'll do a quick overview of our agenda. Welcome. We are so excited to have you here. There was a memo sent out back in 2018 about Lawson's security as security token service being discontinued. We'll go over what that means. Also, we do have some commonly asked questions about ADFS and similar products and their answers. Now, there are some prerequisites that we will be needing, and we'll go over how JK Seva can help you. We will also have a short video to view about ADFS, followed by a discussion about the discontinued LS as STS. JK Seva has great expertise in Infor products, and we're happy to give you recommendations. We'll also be touching on hosting. JK Seva has been hosting Infor products in our data centers for years, and we'd love to talk to you more about how this can help you. And again, please submit any questions you may have for our technical team to answer at our Q&A. We do have a couple polls. So our last stop before we begin, we could just take the next minute or so to answer them. Let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for answering. Next question. Thank you for answering. On to our last question. Without further ado, let's get started. I'll pass this on over to Todd.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily, for getting us started there. I'm excited to get started on this this webinar. We've been preparing for it for a while to make sure we had as much information as possible for you. We want this to be extremely informative. I can't say that I'm going to answer every single one of your questions, so we are going to have some time for Q&A. I say I'm not going to answer all your questions. With my presentation, you're going to have some questions. And so during the time that you may have those questions, there is a little box you can pop up that says, answer questions. Please submit the questions while we're going through the webinar. We are going to be organizing those questions and asking those questions at the end. Both Eric and I will be happy to answer everything we can. If we don't have an answer to your question, we're going to follow up with you on that. So we're going to do our best to get everything included. We don't have a lot of time for this webinar. It seems like an hour is plenty of time, but it never is. I'm not going to spend too much time on every topic. We are going to go through ADFS, and then we're going to jump into InforOS. The first piece of this is the ADFS part of it. And so before we start, I'm going to go through some terminology definitions just to make sure that we're all on the same page. And again, thank you for filling out those polls. Those really help to see where you are and what we're, how I need to guide this webinar a little differently, possibly. So the Active Directory Federation Services, or ADFS piece that Infor introduced a while ago, is a Microsoft product, and what it really does is allows multiple products to communicate with your Active Directory or your directory services through a single and common interface, and not just the Infor products but other products too. For example, a lot of Microsoft products and a lot of different vendors use ADFS. And so it was a very good standard for Infor to move to at the time. And they are using this for logins for their cloud products in their Infor cloud. And it's being used in hosted environments as well as on-prem. So that is why they went that direction. Let me also define what we call an environment. And so an environment to us means a whole set of servers. For example, a whole set of production servers, meaning your Lawson Core technology, your landmark server, your smart office system, your database server. Production, disaster recovery, test, development, or whatever you call them. Most of the clients we work with have different names for every single one of these environments. Some only have a single environment, and some have as many as 6. I think 6 is the most I've worked with. And so that's what we mean when we say environment in these terms. Infor themselves have different words for environment, in fact, multiple different words for environment. Let me cover a few other things with the different products that are involved. And I'm not going to go in order on this screen here, but ADFS is going to be involved in working with all of the products you see on the screen here. And a couple points here. We've been asked from time to time whether you can just use Portal to get into your Lawson Core Technology systems, your S3, or if you have to go through MING.LE, or if you have to use some other user experience or user interface. The word from the product manager at Infor is that Infor MING.LE is required to get you in there. Now, we know a lot of people are not using Infor MING.LE and just going directly to Portal, and we totally support that. We're not Infor. We'll support you however you're going to use your system. But word from them is it's required, and since that is required, Infor Federation Services is also required. That is the way that you allow the access to MING.LE is through IFS. You have other products as well as Landmark and Ion that use the different security models to get into the backend products. Now, InforOS, as we'll talk about later, there's no need to install a separate Infor Federation services because it's built into it. And so we will cover that later. A few more pieces of terminology. We will talk about on-prem or on-premises. That means that you have the servers in a data center that you are controlling. And so that's how we determine on-prem. For a licensing standpoint from Infor, on-prem could also mean that your servers are hosted by a third party. Could be in a data center that is owned by someone else. JK Seva years ago started up 2 different data centers, and we have been hosting the Infor products for quite a long time. We're also a Kronos partner. I'm not going to talk about that now, but we do host the Kronos products as well. Then we talk about the Infor Cloud. So the Cloud Suite name that Infor is changing all of their products to is confused quite often with being required to be in the Infor Cloud. That's not actually true. It's just a name of a product. So Cloud Suite Talent Management, they just recently sent an announcement out for the EAM, from just EAM to Cloud Suite EAM. That doesn't mean that it has to be in the Infor Cloud. It can be on-prem, it can be hosted by a third party. All right, let's get started now into the ADFS. Way back, seems like a long time ago because it was 2 years ago, 2018, a notice went out. In fact, Sarah, can you pull up that notice? Thank you. I'm just going to cover a couple things on this notice. This notice tells you that they will stop in March of 2019, that was a year ago, providing discrepancy corrections to LS as STS. It does not say they're not going to support LS as STS. It doesn't say that they're not going to allow you to use it anymore. It just says that if there's a problem, they're not going to change it. They're not going to fix it. And so there are many people that are still using LS as STS, but you're in a position now that if there is a problem with an update to your operating system, with a patch that comes out for an environment where it could break that LS as STS. And if it does, Infor is not going to fix it for you. They're not providing discrepancy corrections anymore. And so you will be put in a position where you have to, as an emergency for your system, move to ADFS or some other authentication, as we'll talk about in InforOS later. And that's not a fun thing to do without planning ahead. So can you go ahead and close this window, Sarah? And then at the time, and it even suggested on that memo that you could go to ADFS. They provide a few knowledge base articles that describe it in detail, and they also tell you how to get to figure out what you're currently using as an authentication method. I'm going to say what we've been doing. As soon as that notice went out in 2018, we jumped on it and we started moving our systems all internally to ADFS, which gave us a great insight into what is this product, how does it work, and how do you move someone from into ADFS on whatever version of the backend technology you're running, whether it's the Loss and Core technology or the Landmark technology. We also did multiple versions of MING.LE moving into the IFS environment, just to make sure that we had the process down and we knew what it did and why it did what it did. And yet we're still doing it. So which authentication method are you currently using? The knowledge base article talks about how to find this out. And it tells you how to dump out the SSOP service and to look at the primary target lookup. So I'll reference that knowledge base article here. If you wanted to write that down, you can pull that up on the Infor Concierge screen and go to the 1193343 article. Should be able to find it, but how about I just show you how to do it right here? Doesn't take long. So pull up a terminal emulator, lid, or whatever you're using on your system, and go into SSO config. Type in your password. You're going to love it. Our password here is coming up as soon as I can type this. And going back to it, no technical difficulty. There we go. All right. We have Lawson in this environment as our password. Don't remember that. Anyway, number 5 will get you into manage Lawson services. Number 6 will get you into export your service and identity info. Go and say no because you don't want all services. You only need the SSOP service in this case. And you do not need any of the identities, so just type none here. Give it a file name to extract the data to. My favorite file name, you might find this on your system if I've done work for you. And then exit the utility. Open up that XML file to view the contents. I'm going to use LA show here. And then look for the primary target lookup node. And you'll see that in this case here is using LDAP binds. And just to show you that screen before, I'll highlight those 2 fields that or that area. Great. As I showed you that screen before, this one here has those fields highlighted where these are the different values that you may see in that primary target lookup. So if you're not already on use claim base, then you're not using ADFS. All right, let's talk through some of the prerequisites. First of all of the Infor products need to be running on SSL, so you need the secure socket layer running. This is not actually a requirement of the Lawson Infor product. This is a requirement of ADFS, which is a Microsoft product. And if you go to enter some of the required information into ADFS, it will tell you it's not going to do it if you're not putting in HTTPS as that beginning part of the URL. We're also going to let you know that you should be on a most recent environment or patch level. I'm going to show you the compatibility matrix and show you which ones you need to be on. At least they say a minimum level. We're going to recommend that you go to at least the latest level. And then you need to have some sort of directory services running inside your domain for the ADFS piece of this. In this example here, we're using Active Directory. An ADFS instance, we're asked often if you can use a current ADFS instance that you have. It really depends on the version that you're currently running and what is compatible with that version. And Infor is recommended, and we recommend it as well, having a separate ADFS instance for your Lawson and Infor products, because you can control it. We'll show you more what that looks like. But if it's a corporate ADFS, there are things that you can't control with that, and there's some very specific things that have to be set up. And finally, in this case, you're going to need a search user, just like you've done with the LDAP bind. You need a user that can search that Active Directory so that you can put the information in. I will also bring up the point that ADFS is used to move most of the products over on the Infor side to this new authentication method. There are some pieces that still need to use an LDAP bind, and those are some of the communication between Landmark and the Lawson Core technology as a few other rich client login pieces that still need to use an LDAP bind. So you're moving to ADFS, but you're also setting up a little piece that's using the, I'll call it older technology for security. That still has to exist, but it's no longer using the LS as STS. That goes away. Pulled up just the most recent compatibility matrix. It was actually from February 20th, and these are the product versions here. You can pull that up on Infor Concierge, and you can look at this yourself. I'm going to ignore for now the one on the right, but really what we're going to say is just get to the latest environment and patch level. We're happy to help you to get there. There is a process to go through to get you from, like a 10.07 of your Lawson System Foundation over to a 10.010 or 10.011, which happens to be the latest, as well as on your landmark technology. The other products with MSCM, and I'm not going to list them all here for you, but they should be at a certain level before you move to these products. Again, I'm not going to go through every single one of these versions. All right, and then just to let you know what it's going to look like before, or what it looks like now if you're not already on ADFS, it looks like there's the old Infor login screen. You're going to see this piece here where you put your username and password in, and then once you're done with ADFS, you can make it look really nice. In our example here for our sandbox servers, we have it set up to have our logo on there, and just really made it look good. So you can add images, you can change text, you can add custom links, as I'll show you in an example here in a minute. Or you can leave it the default generic Microsoft Office 365 look and feel. So let me go ahead and pull up an active system real quick and show that to you. So I'm using Chrome, and I'm going to go into an active system directly into Portal. I'm just bypassing the MING.LE side right now just to show you this example. I'll log in with the Lawson user and password, and you notice when I click the sign in button, it's going to prepend the domain to the front of the login name. It goes really fast, so you have to watch. And then it pulls up your screen just like normal. Logout button would disconnect you and kill the session. So pretty easy, just looks better and feels better. In this case here, we actually, I put a link into our help desk that we have. So you can add custom links to the screen. Let me walk through an overview. In fact, I'm going to walk through this overview, and then I'm going to add to it while we're still on the screen. And so really what needs to happen is there's modification to some files, and to make sure that you know, we back everything up before we modify anything. It's not the easiest thing to go back to non-ADFS, so we do everything we can to get everything backed up so that if we do need to back it out, we've got all of the details for that. So modify a few files, the SSOP service within your SSO config, and the corresponding service inside your landmark system, they are changed, and you're removing everything about the LDAP bind and replacing it with the claim base. Then we're going to go through and modify all of the SSOP identities so that they have the new information in them. It's going to be pointing to your user principal name, or some people call it the UPN, which is essentially your login to your network. And some people have different logins. In fact, we've written scripts to allow us to actually use the information that's currently in your SSOP identities to look up the user principal name in your system, because sometimes they're not a one-to-one match. We'll load certificates in from ADFS into your Lawson SSO config and into the landmark side. Over on the create side, you either need a new ADFS instance or use an existing one. Again, we can talk about that a little bit more, and I will mention that on the next slide a little bit. And then a whole bunch of other things have to happen with claims and service properties. And before we actually leave the slide, and I don't have this documented, I had mentioned that you need to be SSL. So the process that we go through, if you're not already there, is we assess you or work through getting you on SSL on all of your systems. It can take anywhere from a couple hours to a full day to get an entire set of servers over to SSL. And we're happy to work that through with you. We also recommend that you are already LDAP bound before we even start this process. All of the SSOP identities, if you're not LDAP bound, they have an encrypted password in them. And the LDAP bind process removes that and updates the system to a point where it's easier to move forward into ADFS. It's not that we can't move to ADFS without being LDAP bound, but it's an easier process. All right, talk about some of the recommendations and how we would move this forward. We have been recommending setting up a separate server. We call it the security server, and that server houses ADFS, a new instance of ADFS, so that you keep it separate from your corporate ADFS. Again, you can use what you currently have there, but we recommend separate. It can also hold Infor Federation services. And we even recommend moving your ADLDS if you're in a Windows environment or you're using ADLDS as your directory services for the Lawson security. We recommend moving that over to the server as well. So all of your security is in one place. I also mentioned in here that InforOS can go on that server. So InforOS could run alongside what you currently have going with ADFS on that same server. And as I already mentioned, InforOS has IFS inside it. So we back up everything so that we can back out the changes if necessary. Again, it's not the easiest process to back it out. We have had to do it before, but what we recommend once you start moving forward with it, just go all the way forward. Takes anywhere from several hours to I would say a full day for each environment to move you over. And so I mentioned that because very, very early on, when a lot of people were jumping in to start to work with ADFS, they were giving quotes of 60 to 120 hours per environment to move you over to ADFS. And we just found that it didn't take that amount of time. So roughly 6 to 8 hours per environment is what we found it takes on a normal basis. Now there are other conditions. For example, one of our current projects we're working on has almost 100,000 users on their system. So, and they are not LDAP bound. So moving them over to an LDAP bind, just that process itself takes almost a full day. They're also not SSL, and so that takes roughly a half day to move over. So when I say several hours to get you to ADFS, it means just the ADFS piece of that. So the process for this, if you've been involved in the Infor Lawson product life for a while, you know that it's not a science. It's not type these few commands and you're done. It's a form of art. We've been doing this for 20 some odd years, and two identical systems side by side would have a different approach that you have to take to make it work. So you have to work through the process for each one of those. And the knowledge part of it, someone who really knows this process should be doing it. I'll mention here that you're welcome to try it on your own and jump into it and attack it on your own. It's not for the faint of heart, I will say that. It's an interesting process. I'll mention real quickly that whether you're on-prem, which is not mentioned on this slide, or hosted or in the Infor cloud, different approach to how you've got to take care of this. In a hosted environment, you either need an ADFS instance in that hosted set of servers, or you need one on-prem so that you can handle that communication to your directory services. And then Similar thing with the Infor cloud. However, a security team or a networking team will work with you on what ports and what part of the your system needs to be opened to the Infor system in order to allow that communication. We work with them hand in hand to make that happen. So if you need help just on that piece of it, feel free to contact us, because we do work very well with them on that. All right, we have put together, just to make life easier on everyone, a simple questionnaire that can get us to a point where we can answer your questions easier. In fact, go ahead and pull up that questionnaire. I'm going to mention a few pieces on that. So it's on our website. This link will be posted or pasted into the chat window, so you can pull up your chat window and grab that link. In fact, it's happening right now, I think. Very simple. Who are you? You know, how do we contact you if we need to? You do notice the phone number is not a required field, so if you don't want someone calling and harassing you, don't put your phone number in. Although that's not going to happen. We're not going to do anything scary if you put that in. We'll give you a call and say, how can we help you? Scrolling down a little further into the ADFS instance location, we basically mentioned here, where is your ADFS? What are you doing? And in fact, if you look at, click the, we have an instance we'd like to use. It will simply ask you, if you drop that down, what version are you using? And so little simple questions like that. And then down further in the product selection is, what are you running? This here matches up exactly with the compatibility matrix. So we just want to know if you're on the supported version so we can recommend what you should do. And at the very bottom of this form is just letting us know, how many environments do you have? Again, we've defined environments and defined again here on this page. And then any other information that you have, you may want to put in here, you know, we're not on SSL yet. We need to move to SSL, or we're not LDAP bound, and that's a consideration we have to take. So go ahead and do that and click the send, and someone will happily get back with you and let you know what's going on. All right, time to move over to InforOS. So let's talk about InforOS. Here's what Infor.com has to say about InforOS, and I'm going to bring this up here because InforOS is not just a product that you can use in place of ADFS. It is a whole lot bigger. And in fact, even the highlights that are listed here on Infor's website, it doesn't even brush the surface of what InforOS is. This is the user experience platform of now and the future. This is where Infor is going, presenting all of their products to you on a single sign-on, on a single page. And it is an amazing platform. It covers so much stuff, it's ridiculous. I actually can't say enough about it. But for this webinar, we're only going to talk about one piece of it. InforOS as security token service is the only part we're talking about. And so the compatibility matrix, this one column showed up, I would say about 6 months ago, and it just, I don't know when they actually added this here, but I think what happened was the plan on moving forward with using InforOS as a security token service came into play when Infor, I don't know if it was by design or they realized it, is that they will be able to use a different platform, and it doesn't have to be ADFS to have your authentication happen. And it plays right into where they're going with the next and future versions. You do have to be at newer versions and newer releases of some of the product in order to use InforOS as STS. And as noted in the footnote, some products are not compatible with the InforOS as STS. In this listing here, Smart Office, if you're a huge Smart Office shop, you can't use this security method here. Within Smart Office, you'll be using a SAML connection, as well as Loss and Analytics does not support this. All right, so why go to InforOS? I'm going to list out some things here. First of all, LS as STS is no longer maintained. And so since they're not providing discrepancy updates for LS as STS, and you may not want to go to ADFS, there's a few reasons you'd stick with InforOS instead. So ADFS has the infrastructure dependencies within your environment where you may have a current corporate ADFS or several instances that that they don't want to support you on, that you don't want to be using that because of the requirements needed by Infor to use ADFS. And your infrastructure may not want you to install your own ADFS instance on a separate server. So in this case here, you wouldn't have to. You can use InforOS instead. Then InforOS provides integration with other identity providers, and I will list that out in a few minutes, but you don't have to just go with Active Directory to do your authentication. In fact, I think it'll surprise you everything you can connect to. You can use InforOS as a standalone authentication provider where you can set up InforOS to do an LDAP bind to your current Active Directory. So you don't have to, again, go through ADFS, and you don't have to have certain versions. And as mentioned, no, actually I didn't. ADFS is still supported. If you have a current ADFS instance you're using, or if you've already moved to ADFS and you want to put InforOS on top of that and continue to use it, it's totally supported. Here's some more information. This is a list of most of the identity providers that are supported by InforOS. Essentially, anything that is a SAML 2.0 is supported with InforOS. And again, here's a list. We're currently working with some that are using Okta. We've been asked about Azure AD and a few of the others. And so, again, this is just a subset of those that are supported. Still thinking about it, not sure what you should do? Let me pull up a few other things here. InforOS brings that Cloud Suite technology stack to you today. Yes, in your on-prem environment, you can have the current look and feel of where it's going to be in the future. Basically, your version 11 products with the Cloud Suite name, and the stuff even going into version 12. In fact, as I mentioned here, MING.LE is included in InforOS. You don't have to implement MING.LE 12. However, it's bundled in, so you can just pull it right up. And so not a bad reason to go there. As well as you can pull in your non-Infor products into InforOS and present them through the MING.LE 12 interface. So there are a lot of reasons why InforOS would be a great platform to move to. Finally, few points to make here. Yes, you can do it yourself. If you'd like to attempt to tackle this on your own, go for it. It's there. If you run into problems with it and you're tackling it yourself, feel free to call us. We don't have a problem jumping in and saying and coming alongside you and helping. We're not gonna say that I told you so. You should have talked to us earlier. You know, we don't care about that. We want you as the customer to be happy. We want you to have a good experience with it. And if you're frustrated, we understand. We've been there. We've helped many clients through the frustration in dealing with the Infor products. So feel free to contact us on that. I will let you know that if you're doing it yourself and you open a support case with Infor, they won't help you. We've experienced this as well in dealing with the people or customers who have said, we're doing it ourselves. And then they contact us saying, they say, call ICS, and we don't want to do that right now. I'm very close with the people at ICS that would support you once you are live with it and once you have some questions. Lori and Chris, a lot of you have worked with those names at Infor. They love that I tell you exactly these things right here, that don't call them if you're having a problem, because they want to make sure you know ahead of time that they're not going to be able to support you because it is not in their list of tasks they need to do in this. And so, and as I already mentioned, let us help you. It's a one-time thing. You're going to move over to this, and then you're going to, be on it for the next, 5, 6, 7 years, however it's going to be until the next technology comes out. So it's a one-time thing. And I always recommend, if you're doing something that you're only going to do one time, don't go through the pain of having to do it yourself. You're never going to maintain. You're never going to do anything with it. Once it's in place, it stays in place. All right, well, I'm going to wrap it up real quick and just say thank you for letting me have this opportunity to share our experience with this. We are going to be planning a InforOS webinar soon in the future, where it's going to go deeper into InforOS, but that was not the purpose of this webinar. Emily, I think I'm passing it back to you.
Thanks, Todd. Now we're going to transition into our live Q&A. If you have any further questions or have not submitted any yet, please submit them now. And I do want to remind you of our exit survey that will be emailed to you once we are done. That is where you can request a copy of this presentation. With that, I'll turn this over to Justin Raskin, Todd, and Eric Kastle. Justin will be leading our Q&A.
Thank you, Emily. And thank you, Todd, for that great presentation and great insight on ADFS and InforOS. At this time, we are transitioning into the live Q&A, and I'll be reading through our questions. As I read through those questions, please feel free to continue to submit them, and we'll get along. So, Todd and Eric, first question: is it difficult to modify the login screen for the ADFS login?
This is Eric. No, but it does take some knowledge of JavaScript and PowerShell to get it done. If you attempt to do this yourself, there's a Microsoft article that explains it all. Again, it's a little bit tricky. It doesn't take us long to do, so if that's something you wanted done for you, it's not a big deal for us.
Thank you, Eric. Next question: can we use a different domain for our logins? What if our users have different logins in the other domain?
Eric, do you want me to take that one?
Sure.
Great, thank you. So yes, you can have different domains. Really, whatever you can set up within your ADFS. For example, we have clients that have a longer domain when they log in. It's actually, unfortunately, so long that it makes it so that the loss in core technology piece doesn't quite work right, and they have to have modified some of their users because of how they've set up their name. And in this example for us, we could use JK Seva as, JK Seva, in fact, you saw it in the login, jkseva.net, and it had /Lawson. And then that allowed us to log in. We could also set up something internal that was just JK. And so we can have both of those set up at the same time and be used with this, because you're using a Microsoft product in the background, not the Infor security services there. You're connecting through to whatever is set up in your user principal name in your Active Directory in this example. So whatever that happens to be, if it matches what you've configured in the system, it'll allow you to log in.
Thank you, Todd. Next question. We are on version 10.0.7. Do we have to update in order to make this change?
Eric, can you go ahead and take that one, since you've had more recent experience with doing it and having some trouble with that version? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you covered that in the webinar earlier, or in what you talked about earlier. Well, 10.07 is supported. We did run across one client where we ran into issues that couldn't be resolved, and went ahead and installed the latest ESP, which didn't correct it either. So we found other issues with it, but what's going to happen is if you run into an issue and you're on 10.07, Infor support's going to ask you to install the latest ESP. So we recommend that you do at least go to 10.0.10, and of course 10.0.11's out, so that's naturally where we go. If version 12 comes out, of course we would go to that.
Yeah, and if I can add to what Eric just said, the term that came out in our support with Infor Extreme on this example, in fact, has happened a couple times, is they said that it's supported but not maintained. So that's the first time I heard that term, but that applies to a few different pieces. When it's older technology and older versions, they will support it. But if there's an issue, as Eric said, and they can't get it to work with what you have there, they're not going to modify 10.07 to make it work. They're going to tell you, go to the latest version. And I think, again, if you've been on Infor for a while and you've run into issues, you've run into this before where they will just tell you, upgrade to latest or apply a patch, and then we'll help you. Same example here, it'll play out the same way.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Eric. Next question. How many people are still on LS as STS? What % of Lawson users that you know of are using it?
You want to take that one, Todd?
Yeah, I'm going to. We don't really know. I'll tell you that. It just surprises us, you know, on a regular basis, how many still have not moved over. Because it was something that came out a while ago. It actually surprises that a lot of people don't remember ever getting that notification. The notification was sent out a couple times, but they don't remember ever seeing it. So I don't know, maybe if those go into the wrong contacts and just never being forwarded. You know, you get a lot of communication from Infor about the different things that are going on. So those things are easy to miss. And so this is one of the reasons we put this out there. This is one of the reasons that you know, Justin and Emily and the team kept pushing these out and putting it on our you know, the Instagram and on the LinkedIn and everywhere, just to make sure people know, get in here and look at it, because you may not know that you need to be doing this. And so we run into where, you know, we're jumping in there and they're still using Lawson security and haven't moved over even to the LDAP bind for whatever reason. But we don't know how many are still left. We know that we've done dozens of these. I'm not going to say hundreds of them, but it's you know, the few dozen, and with, you know, thousands of Lawson Infor clients. I know there aren't a lot of consulting firms that are doing this piece of it, and so we jumped on it really early and started helping, and don't know how many are left.
You know, I could add one thing to that. I remember back in the version 9 to 10 upgrades, we had some clients that they just wanted to keep the same look and feel for the users. I think they felt that it made it easier for the transition for the users, especially if the applications were upgraded as well. So that's one thing I remember seeing. This was years ago. So.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Eric. Next question. How many clients are doing Portal instead of MING.LE?
Hey, I can also answer that one. A lot of them. I will say it that way because, again, very early on when MING.LE was being pushed out, I was in direct communication with some of the people doing this at ICS. I'm not going to mention any names because I'll get people in trouble. But they said that they would even recommend clients using Portal instead of MING.LE. Now, that being said, I have pushed and pushed and pushed back on the Infor and the product managers and the support, and I ask on a regular basis, or I used to. How about I say this? I backed off on asking them because I finally got the product manager to come out and say what I'd mentioned earlier. If you're using Portal as an interface, it is required that you use MING.LE to communicate through Portal to your backend system. That's a requirement of Infor. Now, do they know you're not using MING.LE? Absolutely not. MING.LE, from what I was told again by some of these people that work for Infor, is it's an interface into Portal. And so the primary reason to be using MING.LE, besides it's supposed to be there because it's required, is that if you have a single sign-on to where you can log in and go to your Lawson LBI, your IBI, you can get to the MSCM, you can get to your Lawson Core Technology, your S3 applications. You can also get through to your landmark applications, all from a single sign-on. So if you have all of these things in play, as well as a few other products, if you're using those, they're plugins to MING.LE, and I'm talking MING.LE 10, MING.LE 11. They're plugins that allow you to do that with a single sign-on. Now, when you move to MING.LE 12 with InforOS, it opens up so many. I mean, I don't even know how many plugins to talk to different applications there are. I haven't counted them. And so it really gives you a same look and feel and user experience. And let me mention one other thing too. There are two different versions of Portal now, and they're both supported. So you have a 10.0 version, and you have a 10.1 version of Portal. The 10.1 version of Portal, completely different look and feel, and everyone that's gone with that has loved it. It just is it's such a different experience, and it brings you into what I say the 21st century. Takes you away from that old look and feel and hard to look at screen into something that is really easy to flow through with.
Thank you, Todd. Next question. How complicated is it to set up Okta?
This is Eric. I guess I'll take that one. I'm currently working with a client to implement Okta instead of the not the ADFS. It's in work right now. If you want to contact us directly with that, we can get back to you on how that's going and give you some more information on it.
Thank you, Eric. Moving on, what is the difference between InforOS with ADFS versus InforOS with STS?
I'll go ahead and answer that one. InforOS, well, let me think about this for a second. Sorry, I jumped in here. Can you ask that question again? I think I got confused with it.
What is the difference between InforOS with ADFS versus InforOS with STS? Okay,
yeah, I think the question is let me clarify it a little further. So the InforOS is the authentication that you would be using, and it's InforOS as STS, and so STS is Security Token Services. So as it stands right now, if you're not using if you're not using ADFS, you're using what they call Lawson Security as Security Token Services, or as they call it, LS as STS. And so moving to InforOS as STS, it's basically replacing the authentication method. And so InforOS is just that way that you're logging in, you're communicating through to that authentication piece. And so I think the InforOS can be used with ADFS. InforOS can be used with any SAML 2.0 based identity providers. Of course, including ADFS, including directly with AD, your Active Directory. So hopefully that answers it. The question was confusing to me at first.
Thank you, Todd. That now concludes the live Q&A, and I'll be transitioning this back over to Emily.
Thanks, Justin. And as we're coming to a close, I invite you to look us up on our LinkedIn and other social media platforms. You are also able to contact us at info@jkseva.com. And again, you are able to share your contact information with us by filling out the exit survey. That'll be emailed out to you shortly, and we'll get in contact with you very soon. And lastly, we wanted to take a minute to thank you so much for your time and joining us today. I hope our webinar was helpful and that we were able to answer everything you needed. We hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, and thank you. I'm going to finish it up too, Emily. All of these links have been pasted and posted into the chat window, and we're going to leave this page up for a few minutes after we close this. So a few of us will disconnect, but this page will stay up for you to make sure you get this information down. And again, I'll add my thanks to everyone for joining. And if anyone is still there, I'll go ahead and add, you will be getting an exit survey. If you don't mind filling that out, that would be great. It'll help the team understand how we did. Thank you.